Do you do the maths, discovering abundance over scarcity? If someone was making a point and urging me to think something through, they might casually, yet tongue-in-cheek, use the phrase, "Come on, Austen, do the maths." I wonder how your maths was at school. Do you have those bad memories of reciting times tables at the front of the classroom? Well, today we're going to reflect upon the cost of our investment in children and our approach to what is often voluntary but always faith-based work. Going deeper, GSU's own work with numbers might take us to new places in our thinking, because I've discovered that doing the maths can be life-changing. It's interesting how much maths takes place in the Bible. We learn of the early church increase, and the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved in Acts 2:47. This feels like maths on a large scale. We also know that where two or three gather in my name, there am I with them, from Matthew 18 verse 20. Numbers on a more intimate, smaller scale. And then in Luke 14, 27 to 29, Jesus actually advises some counting. And whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and are not able to finish, everyone who sees it will ridicule you. In context, we know he makes it clear that the cost of carrying a cross is not simply financial. You will know from your work with children, it demands your physical energy, your time, and your emotional investment. So for this session of the Children's Leaders Network, doing the maths is about weighing up what is before you, your investment in children, and challenging our ideas through some theological reflection. There are exceptions to my following point where some locations have thrived. But weighing it up, have you felt beaten back by the post-COVID trends of less attendance, scarcity of volunteers, and changed weekend routines? After recently talking to some musical leaders, they wrestle with the tension of belonging and public participation when they are texted minutes before an event to be told so-and-so is not coming. Doing the maths may mean admitting that we now operate in what feels like a fluid culture of self-serving choices, where there no longer exists any guarantees and commitment is resigned to the history books. There will always be circumstances which impact your children's work, and you will get to discuss these in your breakout groups. Budgets have to be set, volunteers put on rotas, and your preparation may feel last minute. But with the help of tonight's book, the Archbishop of Canterbury's Lent book for 2022, Embracing Justice by Isabel Hamley, let's go on a journey of theological reflection as we consider a maths of abundance instead of the maths of scarcity. Now, scarcity can make us panic, even lose sight of the humanity of others. For those of you at our Shalom conference in March 23, Andrew Grinnell highlighted the contrast between the mindset of Pharaoh and the God of Israel. Pharaoh was a threatened leader, terrified of scarcity, which, Hamley writes, opens the door to exploitation and a justification for inequality. The stage is set for a showdown between the Lord of the universe and a pretend God of Egypt. In Exodus 5 verse 1, Moses makes a request to Pharaoh that work should stop and that Sabbathing is a pretty good idea. This questions the goals of work and productivity. I quote Hamley again. Pharaoh immediately seizes on the economic impact of the request. It is stopping work, even for a short time, that enrages him, and his response centers on work and economics. He imposes more work on the Hebrews, thereby reasserting his own vision of the world. So Pharaoh thinks of himself, his status, and he's not interested in pressing pause to consider how good a break might be. God's timetable, which could benefit himself and, of course, establish a more just society. Have you ever been in that place where the urgency of the task makes you keep going until you're on your knees, when you're just running on fumes? It's heroic, but secretly we wish others would notice or perhaps even offer to help out. It's a scarcity outlook which causes us to become obsessed with productivity, with control, even with our reputation as children's leaders. And in the chaos, our characters become hardened to the larger story of a more just society. Yet Sabbathing or scheduling rest might help us turn towards the abundance within humanity. Pausing may help us to reset and remember what justice looks like within our children's work. Hamley states, "A just community is one within which the gifts of all are being recognized and put to the service of the whole, while no one person is overextended." Just consider the needs of your group for the moment and the challenge to create a culture of belonging, even amongst the volunteers. This becomes particularly important where disability is involved. And in response to the voice of local leaders, just as a heads up, our July Explore It material is centered upon the theme of disability and belonging. I've begun to think that abundance often comes from the children. It's hearing their voice that makes a difference. When Ofsted inspects schools, for example, they look for this shared ownership into decisions made about children and what matters in their lives the most. Hamley again. A society cannot be just unless it enables each and every person to be seen and heard. We enjoy hearing the stories of children, their news, their opinions, and their ideas. And as we expect this abundance, we create a culture of justice. Justice is not something we do, it's an attitude of openness to those who surround us. Seeing the world through God's eyes, wanting its healing, becoming a kind of person rather than simply knowing what is right. So justice is the outcome of an abundant mindset. There is enough bread to go round. Now, doing the maths may also mean preparing for some tough decisions. We don't all have ideal lives of bliss and live happily ever after. Bad things happen. As children get older, they will indeed cross-examine the Disney story curve. Children are taught about story arcs or mountains at school, with a beginning, a build-up, climax, and resolution. As you can see, some narratives are more reflective of normal, ordinary life, the picture on the bottom right, than others. But do we ever try to make children happier by steering clear of the harder parts of the Bible? We think we're doing the right thing. We've done the maths in one sense. But I believe we have an abundant story of God. Let me explain. In the book of Job, we see that his friends don't want to acknowledge that pain can happen to anyone and that life is simply unfair. Hamley writes, "They comfort themselves with an illusion of order that preserves their own power and status and enables them to shrug off the obligation to care for their friend as of equal standing, righteousness, and ability." But for me, this is the power of the Bible. Job is righteous. There is no sin. This is not karma. His friends are just miserable comforters. They don't even know what to say. But this dilemma sits within a wider story, the abundant story of a suffering God. Doesn't every child want to know that God is with them at all times? That's what we tell them anyway. and it's an abundant claim. But scarcity always screams more loudly than abundance. Nikki and Pippa Gumbel were the husband and wife team that led Holy Trinity Brompton Church of Alpha fame through 46 years, Alpha reaching 30 million people. But things didn't always go well. And if things went pear-shaped, one of them would say to the other, well, it didn't look great on Calvary, did it? But as children's leaders, it's often scarcity which screams more loudly than abundance, denting our confidence when children don't show up, or when we face disappointment, or when things don't look good. Now, the Edvard Munch Museum in Oslo houses his famous paintings of the Scream. Once you understand the artist's social isolation, then the pictures make sense. It's a famous picture of scarcity. Munch did not enjoy close relationships as he got older, but on the bridge you can see two people walk together in the background. The intense colour, the wavy lines, it's all intended to scream at us, the viewer. I'm on my own. This experience is oppressive. Where can I get help? Perhaps it's your cry at the end of a children's session. But today I'm proposing that doing the maths in a kingdom manner could change our outlook. So let's now build our confidence in an abundant look at some scripture which offers us a hopeful path. Because we discover some surprises when we see the way the maths is done in the Bible, and it's often counterintuitive. Forgiveness, for example, goes beyond maths. The Old Testament statement of an eye for an eye wasn't a requirement, it was a limitation. But Jesus took it even further. In him, Hamley writes, the logic of escalating revenge is not merely restrained, but reversed into a prescription of escalating forgiveness. As Jesus tells his disciples to forgive 70 times 7, Matthew 18, 21 to 22. I think that's 490 times, which might just show that Jesus had a sense of humour. In a similarly light-hearted way, Jesus pierces the heart of our tendency to do the maths when things or people are lost. In the genius sequence of Luke 15, Jesus raises the stakes in parables. With sheep, he starts with 1 in 100. Then with lost coins, it's 1 in 10. And then finally, with the prodigal son, it's 1 in 2. Actually, with the prodigal, it's 1 on 1. The ratios diminish each time until he makes the point that there is no favoritism and that his searching for what is lost knows no restraint. Now, this could all quite easily be misunderstood. I've heard people say when a court is looking outwards, well, you need to value the people you've got as well. Yes, I agree. But Jesus looking for the one is in fact a service to the 99, because he is teaching that he would search for them too. Now, abundant maths will not be easily understood by older brothers and loyal shepherds. They might think he's crazy to go searching. But it's this risk-taking spirit of the children's worker who refuses to bury their treasure in the ground, knowing that God entrusts them with an abundant story curve. In Matthew 25, Jesus' parable about bags of gold entrusted to people reveals how scarcity protects, scarcity preserves, but looking outwards with community engagement is surely most true to the example Jesus gives. When some of you waited at garden gates with activity packs during the pandemic, you valued the one. When you decided that it was best to act with creativity and reach children in new ways, you acted with an abundant mindset. If you are grieving the impact of COVID, tearing through your numbers, perhaps a scarcity mindset has taken hold just for a moment. This session has been a time when we need to do the maths, not focus upon weakness, but in faith, work with what we've got. Doing the maths in the way the child did at the most famous picnic of all time. In John 6, a child sees 5,000 hungry people and decides to give his packed lunch of loaves and fish to Jesus. Again, the maths of God is surprising. Not only were they all fed, but there were 12 baskets left over. Why would God not do a perfect calculation? Just take the divisor, 5 loaves, 2 fish, into 5,000 and leave things neatly. But no, we get 12 baskets left over. Children will call this at school their remainder. And we learn from this that God's provision is abundant. It's more than enough. And I love the fact that the stimulus was a child. So to conclude today, in what has been a very reflective session based upon passages of Scripture, I hope that we have provided space for you to weigh up what is before you as children's leaders, to evaluate the strength of your investment in children, and perhaps encourage you around the potential impact of your work as you do the maths with an abundant mindset. There are now 3 breakout questions which my colleagues will lead you through for the rest of this Children's Leaders Network. And I look forward to seeing you all next time.